A man who feels nothing is quietly dangerous. His silence commands, his detachment wounds, and his calm masks storms inside. He moves without guilt, without remorse, untouched by pain, but his strength isolates him too. Beware the charm of emptiness, for what feels like power may hide a void. An emotional void is not simply the absence of feeling. It is a silence that fills every corner of a man's being, a hollowness that echoes louder than any scream. It is a space where empathy, compassion, and warmth once lived, now replaced with a cold, unshakable emptiness. People around him might mistake his quiet for strength, his indifference for control, but beneath it lies a depth of nothingness that shapes every action, every word, and every pause. When a man feels nothing, he is not merely untouched by pain, he is untethered from the very threads that connect human beings to each other. He can witness sorrow without flinching, betray trust without hesitation, and break hearts without awareness of the cracks left behind. The world sees the surface, his calm composure, his calculated gestures, but few understand the abyss beneath, a void so deep that even he may not fully comprehend its edges. This emptiness is both armor and weapon. It protects him from disappointment, from the ache of love lost, from the sting of rejection, but it also allows him to move through life in ways others cannot. When feelings are absent, guilt has no hold, remorse has no voice, and consequences are experienced only externally. He can act with precision and coldness because nothing within him reacts. Decisions come without hesitation, words land without remorse. Yet the very absence of feeling that makes him formidable also isolates him. He cannot truly connect, cannot truly love, cannot truly be seen. The void that shields him also imprisons him, keeping the warmth of human experience at bay. People drawn to him sense it immediately, even if they cannot name it. There is a strange fascination with a man who feels nothing. The calmness in chaos, the unbothered gaze, the ability to remain steady when the world around him collapses. But that fascination is laced with fear. There is danger in the void because it is unknowable, unpredictable, and absolute. Love, friendship, empathy, all the forces that bind humans have no purchase there. To encounter him is to confront a mirror of what it feels like to exist without the softening edges of emotion, to see a reflection that reminds you of your own vulnerability. And yet, despite the outward projection of power, the emotional void is a silent scream. It is a lonely fortress, built not for domination, but as a response to pain too great to endure. Behind the strength lies absence, behind the composure lies detachment, and behind every calculated action lies a space where feeling once resided, but is no longer permitted to grow. The void shapes him, drives him, defines him, and in that absence, everything becomes sharper, colder, and infinitely more dangerous to those who step too close. Silent domination is a power that is invisible yet undeniable. It is not shown through loud words, grand gestures, or visible control. It is subtle, quiet, and lethal in its own way. A man who wields this form of dominance does not need to raise his voice, for the stillness of his presence commands attention. People notice instinctively when someone holds themselves in a way that cannot be shaken, when every movement, every pause, every glance carries authority without arrogance. His strength lies not in force, but in restraint, in the ability to influence without appearing to influence at all. There is a weight to his silence, a gravity that draws others in, makes them listen, makes them bend in ways they may not even recognize. He does not shout, yet his opinions shape decisions. He does not demand loyalty, yet trust is given freely, often without question. People are drawn to him because they feel something unspoken, a sense of certainty and control that the world rarely offers. His calm in chaos, his detachment in moments of drama, and his refusal to be moved by others' reactions create a subtle power that is both magnetic and terrifying. In the presence of such a man, people adjust their behavior instinctively. They tread carefully, they second guess, they seek approval, all because the silence itself is commanding. Silent domination is particularly dangerous because it is unpredictable. When emotions drive people, reactions are expected, anger erupts, sadness pleads, joy attracts. But a man who dominates silently cannot be read. His intentions are hidden behind a composed exterior, and his actions are measured, precise, and often calculated. You do not see the storm coming because the storm does not announce itself. And that is the true power, the ability to move through life without the vulnerability of feeling, to influence outcomes while remaining untouched, to strike when necessary without leaving a trace of chaos in his own path. Those around him may not realize the danger until it is too late. A word spoken at the wrong time, a glance interpreted incorrectly, or an expectation unmet can shift the balance, leaving others unprepared for the consequences. People may admire him, fear him, or even love him, but none of these connections weaken his control. He does not need to assert dominance outwardly because dominance is embedded in who he is. His mere existence reminds others of their own limitations, their own impulses, their own inability to remain untouched in the face of emotional turbulence. And yet there is a hidden cost to this kind of power. To dominate silently, he must remain detached, always measured, always observing. His relationships are distant, his connections controlled, and his inner world often lonely. The very skill that makes him formidable also isolates him, creating a life where admiration and fear coexist, but genuine understanding is rare. The world bends quietly to his presence, but he walks through it alone, carrying the weight of a dominance that is both a gift and a burden, sharp and precise, invisible but absolute, silent but utterly commanding. Manipulation through detachment is a quiet, almost invisible power that few understand until they are caught in its wake. It is not loud, it is not forceful, yet it moves people in ways that words and actions rarely can. A man who has mastered detachment does not chase approval, does not plead for attention, and does not react to provocation. He exists outside the emotional tides that pull most people under, and in that calm distance, he exerts influence without ever needing to speak it aloud. Those around him interpret his silence, his lack of reaction, his measured absence of feeling, and find themselves shifting, changing their words, adjusting their actions, and even doubting their own instincts. Detachment becomes a mirror, reflecting others' desires, fears, and insecurities back at them, subtly guiding them, shaping them, and controlling them without ever appearing controlling. The danger of this kind of manipulation is that it feels like nothing at all. There is no overt threat, no demand for compliance, no apparent scheme. And yet those who encounter him find themselves bending unknowingly to the rhythm of his absence. A delayed response, a quiet smile, or an uninterested gaze can provoke reactions more powerful than anger or confrontation ever could. People try to fill the space he leaves with their own emotion, their own energy, their own mistakes. They seek validation where there is none. They seek answers where none are offered. And in this vacuum, the detached man's influence spreads like a shadow, subtle yet absolute. Detachment is not simply avoidance. It is intentional, purposeful, and sharp. It allows him to observe the world without being caught in its currents, to understand motives without being swayed by sentiment, and to act without hesitation when opportunity or necessity demands. Others are drawn to him because he seems unshakable, unbothered, unbreakable. They want to reach him, to touch him, to feel his attention, and in trying, they give him power over them. What he lacks in outward engagement, he gains in subtle control. Those around him are manipulated not through lies, threats, or coercion, but through the very absence of engagement. Their hearts, their fears, and their ambitions respond to a silence they cannot decode, a stillness that unnerves, and a distance they cannot bridge. And yet this mastery of detachment comes at a cost. In manipulating the world through absence, he isolates himself from it. He may move effortlessly, striking with precision and leaving ripples behind, but he walks alone. Genuine connection is foreign, warmth is dangerous. Those who are drawn to him may admire, fear, or even love him, but none can penetrate the calm fortress he has built around himself. The very tool that makes him powerful, his ability to manipulate through detachment, is also a barrier, a reminder that to control others so completely, one must also remain untouchable, unmoved, and alone. The danger of unchecked pain is one of the most silent yet devastating forces in a man who feels nothing. Pain, when ignored or buried, does not disappear. It festers, shaping the heart, hardening the soul, and coloring every interaction with an invisible intensity. A man who has endured too much, who has been wounded deeply and repeatedly, often learns to lock his feelings away, to push away the hurt until it becomes a part of him, hidden yet defining. What the world sees as strength, his calm, his indifference, his unshakable composure, is often a mask for the storms that rage quietly beneath. The absence of emotion is not peace, it is survival. And survival, when carved from pain, can become dangerous, unpredictable, and absolute. Unchecked pain turns empathy into absence. It erodes the capacity to forgive, to connect, and to trust. A man who feels nothing has often learned that to feel is to be hurt, and to be hurt repeatedly is to risk being broken entirely. So he withdraws, shutting the world out to protect himself from further wounds. But this protection is double-edged. While it shields him from vulnerability, it also isolates him from love, compassion, and understanding. Those around him may mistake his distance for confidence or superiority, but it is pain that fuels the emptiness, pain that has hardened into a quiet, unyielding force. Every calculated word, every measured action, every silent stare is infused with the memory of hurt, shaped by the lessons of betrayal, loss, and disappointment. Unchecked pain also breeds a quiet rage. It is not explosive or loud. It simmers beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when it can assert control, when the world provides an opportunity to repay itself for the suffering endured. This rage does not always manifest in overt anger. Sometimes it shows in manipulation, in detachment, in the coldness that leaves others wondering how someone can be so untouched by emotion. He does not lash out because he feels nothing in the moment. He lashes out because pain has sculpted his sense of justice, his boundaries, and his way of interacting with the world. Every action becomes precise, measured, and informed by the lessons learned from wounds he refuses to acknowledge, even to himself. And yet, the danger is not just to others. It is to him. Pain left unchecked erodes the self quietly but relentlessly. The emptiness that comes from suppressing grief, heartbreak, and disappointment leaves a man untouchable by warmth, but also untouchable by joy. Relationships falter before they begin. Love is deflected before it can take root, and the possibility of vulnerability becomes a risk too great to ever consider. What makes him formidable, what makes him feared, is the very same thing that threatens to consume him from within. He moves through life like a shadow of his own making, carrying strength forged in hurt, but strength that isolates, distances, and defines him in ways he may never fully understand. There is a strange, undeniable pull toward a man who feels nothing, a tension that lives somewhere between fear and fascination. People are drawn to him almost instinctively, even when they sense that he could never be fully known, never truly touched, never entirely trusted. It is a magnetic force, the kind that unsettles the soul, making hearts race and thoughts spin, because what lies behind his calm is unknowable. His silence becomes a question, his detachment a challenge, and his composure a mirror reflecting the insecurities, desires, and fears of those who dare to approach him. There is something intoxicating about someone so untethered, someone who walks through storms untouched, yet in that very untouchability lies danger. Fear stems from the unpredictability he carries. Emotions guide most people, and reactions are often easy to anticipate. Joy leads to warmth, anger to confrontation, sadness to vulnerability. But a man who feels nothing cannot be read. He moves through life with a quiet precision, a stillness that disarms, and a gaze that observes without judgment. Those around him are left guessing, interpreting, and questioning, unsure whether they are welcome in his world or merely tolerated. The lack of response, the absence of visible sentiment, triggers an unease deep in the chest, a fear that is subtle yet persistent. It is a fear born not of threat, but of unpredictability, a fear that acknowledges the power in detachment, in control, in emotional immunity. Fascination, however, is the flip side of that fear. There is a lure in the unshakable, in the untouchable, in the one who remains composed when chaos erupts. People want to understand him, to unlock the mystery, to feel the spark of connection that seems almost deliberately withheld. They are drawn to the intensity of his presence, the quiet confidence in his movements, and the way he commands attention without effort. It is impossible not to notice him, impossible not to feel something, curiosity, attraction, awe when he enters a room. There is a gravity to his detachment that pulls others toward him, even when logic or experience warns them to stay away. The combination of fear and fascination creates a tension that is both compelling and dangerous. Those who encounter him oscillate between admiration and caution, attraction and self-protection, hope and resignation. The more they try to approach, the more the void within him asserts itself, deepening the sense of distance and mystery. And in that distance, people see both possibility and threat, a reflection of what it feels like to confront someone who is untouchable, unknowable, and unmovable. Yet this fear and fascination exist not only for others, it shapes him as well. He knows the effect he has, and while it may empower him, it also isolates him. The magnetic pull he exerts is not born of connection, but of absence, not of warmth, but of the very emptiness that makes him untouchable. He is admired, envied, desired, and feared, but true understanding remains forever beyond reach. And in that tension lies both the beauty and the danger of a man who feels nothing, a man who can draw others close while remaining entirely his own, untethered and unyielding, a force that is impossible to ignore. A man who feels nothing carries a dangerous freedom in the absence of conscience. Where others are weighed down by guilt, regret, or moral obligation, he moves through life untethered, guided only by his own calculations, instincts, and desires. Without conscience, decisions are not filtered through empathy or compassion. They are executed with precision, unaffected by the ripple effects on those around him. Actions that would paralyze most people with remorse, shame, or doubt are effortless for him because the internal voice that judges, questions, and restrains has been silenced. In this emptiness, there is a terrifying clarity, a kind of strength that is both mesmerizing and threatening. The lack of conscience allows him to cross boundaries others cannot, to take what is not offered, to speak truths that wound, and to act without apology. People often assume that morality is universal, that kindness is expected, that regret is inevitable when wrongs are committed. But for him, these rules do not apply. He moves with an unflinching resolve, often leaving devastation in his wake while remaining untouched, unaware, or indifferent to the consequences. Relationships falter, trust is broken, and hearts are shattered, yet he experiences none of the emotional weight that would accompany these actions in others. He is not cruel for the sake of cruelty. He is cruel because feeling has been stripped away, leaving only the raw mechanics of survival and power. This absence of conscience makes him unpredictable and dangerous. Others attempt to reason with him, appeal to his better nature, or rely on social norms to guide behavior, but none of these are effective. He does not operate by the same moral framework. He is capable of brilliance and destructiveness in equal measure, and no apology, plea, or expectation can sway him. People often mistake his composure for control, but the true power lies in the moral detachment that allows him to act without hesitation, to pursue goals without internal friction, and to maintain dominance without being slowed by sentiment or regret. Yet, the lack of conscience is not merely a weapon against others. It is a reflection of his own inner world. It isolates him because connection requires a sense of moral reciprocity, a shared understanding of right and wrong. Without conscience, empathy becomes impossible, vulnerability is meaningless, and love is either unrecognized or irrelevant. His freedom from guilt grants him control, but it also cements his solitude. People may admire him, fear him, or even desire him, but they cannot truly reach him, for the absence of conscience is an unbridgeable chasm between him and anyone who feels deeply. In essence, a man without conscience walks through life with a singular, unrelenting clarity. He is untouchable, unbound, and often irresistible because he is not slowed by the doubts and hesitations that govern ordinary human behavior. He is dangerous not because he seeks to harm, but because his strength is absolute, unencumbered by reflection, compassion, or remorse. In his presence, the world feels smaller, weaker, and more vulnerable, not through overt aggression, but through the quiet, unnerving absence of feeling that shapes every choice, every word, and every movement he makes. Isolation is both a shield and a prison for a man who feels nothing. His detachment from the world around him is not merely a choice, it is a necessity, a survival mechanism honed over years of hurt, disappointment, and betrayal. When emotions are a liability, when vulnerability has been weaponized against him, the safest place becomes a distance so vast that no one can cross it. Yet within that distance lies a paradox. The very thing that protects him from pain also traps him in a quiet, unyielding loneliness. The inner void he carries is not always visible, but it is always present, a silent companion that shapes every thought, every action, every interaction. It is the space where connection should exist, but instead there is emptiness, a hollow expanse that echoes with the absence of feeling. This void is profound. It is the absence of empathy, of warmth, of attachment, the emptiness that cannot be filled by admiration, fear, or fascination. He can command attention, manipulate outcomes, and exert power over others, yet no external force can bridge the chasm within him. People often mistake his strength for contentment or mastery, but the reality is far grimmer. Strength, in his case, is the armor that hides the hollow core. It is a veneer of control placed over the emptiness he cannot escape. The world sees the calm, the poise, the untouchable demeanor, but it cannot see the quiet ache of isolation that accompanies every step, every measured word, every calculated smile. The inner void is dangerous because it is absolute. It colors his interactions without warning, turning love into strategy, friendship into observation, and desire into calculation. Those who attempt to breach his defenses quickly realize that the space between him and others is vast, impenetrable, and self-sustaining. He does not reject people with cruelty, nor does he push them away with anger. He simply exists apart, and in that existence the world must adjust. People are drawn to him, compelled by curiosity or admiration, but they cannot occupy the emptiness he inhabits. And for those who try, the experience is disorienting, like reaching for warmth in a place that was never meant to hold it. Yet the void is also a reflection of past wounds, pain unacknowledged, grief unexpressed, betrayal unhealed. They all carve a hollow that becomes part of his identity. Isolation is no longer a temporary shelter. It becomes a permanent residence, and in it, he is both sovereign and prisoner. The very power that makes him feared and respected is inseparable from the loneliness that defines him. The emptiness that makes him untouchable also prevents him from being known, from being loved, from truly existing beyond the surface he presents to the world. Every gesture, every word, every silence is shaped by the inner void, a quiet force that ensures he remains apart even when the world reaches for him. In the end, the isolation is total. He walks through life alone, untethered from connection, untouchable by warmth, and defined by a quiet emptiness that no one can fill. The inner void is not a weakness. It is a defining force, a presence that shapes his strength, his danger, and his existence, leaving him untouchable, unyielding, and profoundly alone. The danger of a man who feels nothing is often underestimated until it is too late. He moves through life quietly, subtly, leaving marks that are invisible at first and devastating in their aftermath. Those who encounter him are rarely prepared for the emptiness that drives his actions, the calm that masks storms, or the precision with which he navigates relationships and situations. The warning lies not in loud threats or obvious aggression, but in the subtle signals, the detached gaze, the measured words, the absence of reaction that hint at a power most people cannot anticipate or comprehend. To ignore these signs is to place oneself in the path of a force that is relentless, unflinching, and utterly self-contained. Understanding such a man requires careful observation, honesty with oneself, and recognition of the boundaries he enforces without ever articulating them. He does not ask for loyalty or demand respect. He assumes control through the very absence of emotion, through the silence that leaves others questioning, guessing, and sometimes overreaching. Many are drawn to him by charm, magnetism, or perceived strength, but attraction alone does not protect anyone from the consequences of misjudging him. His danger is in his predictability only to himself, in the way every move he makes is measured against his own inner logic, free from sentiment, guilt, or remorse. Those who attempt to penetrate his detachment, to elicit emotion where there is none, or to manipulate the unmanipulable, often discover too late that they have entered a game with no rules they can understand and no safety they can rely on. The warning to others is subtle but absolute. Do not mistake calm for weakness, silence for submission, or detachment for disinterest. A man who feels nothing operates in a realm beyond conventional influence, beyond ordinary empathy, and beyond the expectations that guide most human interactions. To misjudge him is to invite heartbreak, disappointment, or worse, because he does not respond to moral appeals, emotional pleas, or conventional reasoning. His strength lies in the very absence that others try to fill, and in their attempts to reach him, they expose themselves to a form of power that is cold, precise, and implacable. Those who recognize this, who move cautiously, and who respect his boundaries may survive unscathed. Those who do not risk being consumed by the consequences of his indifference. Yet the warning is not only about survival, it is also a lesson in understanding human limits. He exists as a mirror, showing what it means to be untethered from emotion, what it means to possess power without accountability, and what it feels like to encounter someone whose very existence reminds others of their own vulnerability. The danger is real, but so is the insight. In observing him, one learns the cost of unchecked pain, of detachment, of silence, and of the void that can live inside a single human being. He may walk alone, but his presence leaves an impression that cannot be erased. A quiet reminder that strength without feeling is as perilous as it is magnetic, as isolating as it is commanding, and as dangerous as it is fascinating. In the end, the dangerous strength of a man who feels nothing is a force both fascinating and frightening. His silence commands, his detachment controls, and his absence of conscience shapes the world around him in ways few can anticipate. Yet beneath the power lies a void, an isolation born from pain unhealed and emotions long buried, reminding us that what appears invincible often carries its own quiet suffering. To encounter him is to witness the paradox of strength and emptiness intertwined, a presence that captivates, warns, and unsettles. And the greatest lesson for all of us is to recognize such strength, to respect its boundaries, and to understand that the emptiness which makes him formidable is also the loneliness that defines him.